The United States Army consistently adapts and excels in the ever-evolving landscape of modern warfare. Today's lesson represents a crucial part of this adaptation process. During the M300 block, we focused on supporting large-scale combat operations and effectively executing defensive operations at the division level. We also explore the critical elements of sustainment operations and planning. These elements ensure our forces are well equipped and prepared for the challenges ahead. Sustaining defensive operations requires understanding the methods and procedures found in the area defense, mobile defense, and retrograde defense, as well as the sustainment challenges across these operations. During this lesson, it is important to compare and contrast how sustainment operations may vary during planning and execution. Also note that while consolidation of gains remains a valid doctrinal concept, the consolidation area is no longer part of the operational framework and is now considered part of the rear area. All sustainment functions are planned and executed to support defensive operations and build combat power to prepare for future offensive operations. The exact type and extent of support operations and the organizations executing them will vary by echelon based on the support requirement. Planning efforts are orchestrated to ensure synchronization, integration, and continuity of support across all echelons. We place a repeated emphasis on building combat power, suggesting a layered approach to strengthening defensive capabilities. We also adopt a simultaneous focus on preparing for offensive operations while sustaining the defense. This diagram depicts the flow of support within the division rear area, highlighting key logistical routes and support areas for sustainment operations. Observe that in our doctrine, the support area command post no longer exists at the corps or division level and has been replaced by the rear command post. Take a moment to review the types of defensive operations. Consider the doctrinal definitions and sketches of the three basic types of defensive operations: area defense, mobile, and retrograde. How do they differ? What similarities do these operations share? This diagram depicts various elements of an area defense with symbols representing the forward line of troops, engagement areas, support areas, and so on. The delivery of supplies to maneuver units on a scheduled basis is crucial during the defense. Planners may call for the building of combat-configured loads to meet maneuver unit requirements. CCLs may include essential supplies like water, seaborne defense gear, barrier materials, ammunition, POL, medical supplies, and repair parts tailored for specific unit sizes. During an area defense, sustainment elements are typically positioned further from the front compared to offensive operations to support the battle area's edge. Maintenance efforts are extended as far forward as possible. Forward fixing at maintenance collection points is encouraged to minimize the need for evacuating equipment. Key supplies, particularly ammunition and barrier materials, are pre-positioned in battle positions for ready access by defending forces. Sustainment operations will typically include setting up maintenance and dispersed casualty collection points to support ongoing defense efforts. This diagram illustrates various elements and movements within a mobile defense, including phase lines, engagement areas, support areas, and the location of the striking force. Sustainment planners must anticipate the needs of both the fixing force during shaping operations and the striking force for the counterattack. Planning must account for the increased logistical requirements as the striking force moves. The further the striking force moves, the more supplies are needed, especially fuel. Movement increases the need for maintenance and complicates casualty evacuation procedures. The dispersed nature of the mobile defense may necessitate the establishment of casualty evacuation procedures for both the fixing and striking forces. The fixing force requires tailored supplies and material to be delivered as far forward as possible. Distribution efforts should include pre-planned packages of essential items. The striking force should be task organized with necessary support and sustainment assets, including fuel, munitions, and medical resources. The formation of a forward logistics element enables the rapid replenishment of supplies needed to maintain the striking force's mission-essential capabilities. This slide outlines the logistics and sustainment considerations necessary for conducting a retrograde defense, including the delay, withdrawal, and retirement variations. Sustainment must be agile enough to adapt to the fluidity of tactical situations during retrograde operations. Unnecessary supplies should be prevented from accumulating in areas that will be abandoned. Essential medical and logistics support should be positioned within the area of the retrograde operation. Prioritization of maintenance, recovery, and evacuation efforts is essential alongside criteria for the destruction of inoperable equipment. Maintenance, recovery, and evacuation assets are placed as far forward as possible. Additionally, recovery and evacuation vehicles should be strategically located to prevent disabled vehicles from obstructing movement routes. Planners should prioritize the movement of combat troops and their supplies, repositioning of obstacle materials, the evacuation of casualties, and repairable equipment. Medical support should emphasize the rapid acquisition, stabilization, and evacuation of patients from units in contact with the enemy. Command and control of sustainment units during defensive operations is multifaceted, requiring a balance between centralized direction and decentralized execution. It is vital to ensure that units are responsive to the needs of the force while maintaining coherence in support efforts across the theater of operations. Effective C2 systems and processes enable sustainment units to adapt to the fluid nature of defensive operations, ensuring continuous support to combat units. Typically, planners employ a combination of DS and GS relationships to maximize flexibility. You may recall from earlier lessons that area support is a unit task and not a type of support relationship. All sustainment functions are planned and executed to support defensive operations and build combat power to prepare for future offensive operations. The exact type and extent of support operations and the organizations executing them will vary by echelon based on the support requirement. Even though defensive operations may be the main effort, simultaneous offensive operations within their support requirements are also likely to be ongoing. The most important factors involved in sustainment planning are drawn from a careful analysis of requirements, capabilities, and shortfalls. Planning considerations must also encompass all warfighting functions to ensure the plan is integrated across all functions and domains. As commanders and staffs plan for increased requirements in Class 4, 5, and 9 items to support the defensive effort and build Class 3 stocks, planning efforts should ultimately be designed to prepare for the transition to offensive operations. So this has been an overview of M304, Sustaining Defensive Operations. This overview is intended to supplement your lesson materials. It is not a replacement for a thorough study of Army doctrine.